All right. All right. So here's my question for all of you listening today. Have you ever wondered, and I want you to really think about this, have you ever wondered why the top 3% of sales professionals, really in any industry, why they make more than everybody else? Why do they make 80 to 90% of the income? Why is it just that select few? Like, what skills do they have? And my guest today is going to answer that question plus a lot more. Like, I've been really geeking out about having this interview with this gentleman. I've read a lot of his books. And I love human behavior. I love people who understand human behavior and how that applies to selling and influence and negotiation. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So he's a master persuader. He's a best-selling author of multiple books, including Maximum Influence, Persuasion IQ, and Laws of Charisma. His books have been published all around the world in more than 28 different languages. He's going to talk about that in a minute. He's one of America's leading authorities on persuasion, influence, negotiation. He's worked with some of the most successful and influential people in the world, including the late Stephen R. Covey and Jim Rohn, Larry King, Brian Tracy, I'm a good friend of mine as well, Mark Victor Hansen, Harv Eker, Les Brown, and many others. So over the years, through his experience teaching hundreds of keynotes and workshops all over the world, he's discovered that all salespeople complain about working too hard and not earning enough money. They want to make more money. Salespeople want to earn six figures, multiple six figures, even seven figures a year, but they fall short so many times because of their skill level. And as a result, he uncovered all the crucial elements to the formula of having that success to build that wealth in sales that will help you make major leaps in achieving your aspirations and getting you where you want to go in your sales career. So I want to welcome to the show, Mr. Kurt Mortensen. Kurt, welcome.
Hey, good to be here, Jeremy. Thank you.
Especially a fellow Utah guy. I went to school out in college in Utah, so Utah is like my favorite state. I have to have you on the show.
It's good snow skiing, good for the lakes. I'm a California boy. I miss the beach a little bit, but hey, the mountains are beautiful.
The mountains are beautiful, especially in your backyard. So like I said, I've been waiting to have this interview for a long time with you. I love your work. I love your behavioral science background, human psychology background. It's so important to salespeople today. So what I want to do though, is let's dive into your story and kind of give our listeners like a feel for your background. Like, how did you arrive at this point in your life where you're one of these elite authorities on persuasion and sales? Not only elite, but you understand how things have drastically changed with consumer buying behaviors in the last 10, 20 years and how that's impacting salespeople. That's important. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how that started for you? How did you learn all these skills?
Because I had to. We all persuade for a living, and if you don't learn them, you're going to fail. And my challenge was, I spent all this money on a college degree, right? Got the college degree, and then went and spent more money on a graduate degree in business thinking, that's the ticket. I'm going to be successful. It's guaranteed. Right. And then you get thrust in the workplace and you realize, wow, that was kind of a waste. I learned some good things, but they didn't teach about human nature, emotional intelligence, persuasion, negotiation, influence, motivation, the things I needed as a manager and as a salesperson to really reach out and understand dealing with humans, because humans aren't logical people. We're emotional people, and you try to say, please do it, and they don't, and they say they're going to do it and they don't, and they say they're going to buy it later, and then you meet a prospect that they need it, want it, like it's a perfect fit, and you never hear from them again.
They ghost you.
It's so frustrating that I needed them personally. So I started monitoring top persuaders. I started doing research, and a lot of the things, and you know this to be out there, a lot of things that they still teach you, like, ooh, I don't know about that one. Some of those aggressive closing skills, I've always taught that closing skills is like trying to get a kiss after a bad date.
Very good point.
If someone doesn't like you and trust you, a clever phrase is not going to help you out. There might be a time and place for it, but really, there were so many negative things out there, and I just had to learn it for myself. And that just over time, through research, monitoring top persuaders, I learned it for myself, and people wanted to learn from me, and it just kind of dominoed from there.
Well, you're so right. It's so important. We talk about human, we talked a little bit right when we got in here, like human behavior. Most salespeople still use dinosaur sales techniques that were
Absolutely.
taught in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 80s, boiler room selling, and try to apply them with today's consumer. It's like taking a round piece of wood and trying to plug it into a square hole. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't make any sense. And they wonder why they have so many objections. They wonder why their customers have so much resistance. The wall goes up, and it's because they're using techniques that work against human behavior rather than using skills that work with human behavior. That's a big difference. We could talk about that for a couple of days here, actually. So the first question I wanted to ask you, this kind of leads into that, but how has the consumer, in your mind, how has the consumer changed? And let's say the last 20 years, and how has selling changed in that same time frame?
It's completely different. Like you said, people are still learning these archaic methods that might have worked 10, 20 years ago, but it's so different now that the world is different. People are different. We think different. And we've learned more about the human brain in the last 10 years and the last 100 years combined, why we do what we do. Yeah. So one of the big factors is trust is at an all-time low. 20 years ago, it was I trust you, give me a reason not to. Now it's I don't trust you, give me a reason to trust you. Yeah. So even though you're a good, trustworthy person, you have to earn that trust. That is a huge one. The other one is that we have access to a lot of information. Yeah. Google. Yeah. Google's out there and everyone's the expert. Everyone can just look it up. And that's a big challenge. In fact, I was training a group of medical doctors, and they have a huge challenge because they go to school for what, 8, 12 years, something like that. Sure. And here comes a person, they have their test, the doctor comes in and says, look, based on your test and this, here's your diagnosis, here's your prescription, this is what you need to do. And they say, okay, and they go home and they Google it. And they find somebody in Indiana says, just eat a banana, your doctor's wrong. And who do they believe, Banana Boy or the doctor? It's crazy. Yeah. Banana Boy over the doctor because it's on the internet. On the internet, it must be true. Yeah. That is a huge factor as you go out there. And again, people are so skeptical now. And another big factor, especially as you get younger in the workplace, is power. Yeah. People perceive power and authority much different than they used to, especially with millennials. Sure. In fact, I got a call from the Michigan State Police. They wanted influence training. I'm like, you've got guns. What do you need me for? Right. You've got a gun and a uniform. They says, it doesn't work anymore. Please leave. No. Because I grew up, I don't know about you, when you saw a police officer, it was, yes, sir. Exactly. And I was like, no, I don't want to. Go ahead and shoot me. You can't do that. And yeah, it's a completely different fire. It's completely. And so the way we see power, the way we see information, the way we use our time, the way we use social media has changed everything. 40 years ago, work was work, home was home. Now it's all blurred. There's no. You've really hit the head on the nail. I call it the post-trust era that we live in today. That really, it's been building for decades with certain things like you just mentioned, but really hit the tipping point with the financial crisis in 2008. And people just don't trust. People are cautious. They're skeptical about everything, And if you really think about it, you hit something that's very important there. 20 plus years ago, what was the bridge? It's really quite easy to understand this. What was the bridge 20 plus years ago between the company and the consumer? It was, of course, the salesperson, right? The company would send out their salespeople to educate the public about their products and services. And besides radio and TV and maybe a magazine, that's how people really learned about what you were selling. You were out there educating them, right? And people let you do that. But in our day and age, like you just said, with the power of technology, the ease of the internet, especially social media, we live in a completely different era. The consumer, like you said, they go to Google. They already know about all your company. They know about your products, your services. They know about your pricing. They know who your competitors are. They know how long you've been in business. They know everything about you by simply doing a Google search, even on their phone. And because of that newfound power, the consumer of our day will no longer be, will no longer be manipulated or pressured by pushy salespeople because they know they have many choices to choose the exact product or service that you sell. It's crazy. Exactly right. 100%. All right. 100% right on. And we got to adapt to that. We can't just keep using these old skills and realize, I think one of the biggest factors too, that we're getting past not just the education, it's the edutainment now. People want to be entertained, they want to be engaged. Yeah. And the big challenge I see with a lot of salespeople is that, and this is universal around the world, it's really interesting, is that people's default setting is they tend to persuade people how they like to be persuaded.
Yeah.
They tend to sell how they like to be sold. And then we have to learn to adapt now to different styles, personalities, cultures, departments. And
Yeah.
people just like one size fit all, one clothes fits all, and they don't adapt to that person. And of course,
Yeah.
they're going to resist you. And that is a huge
Well,
block.
it's like, people that play golf. It's like me playing golf, like I'll have 17 holes that I'm just horrible and just really bad at. And I'll have that one hole that I hit the perfect shot. And I'm like, I love golf. I'm just going to keep swinging the same way because I had that one shot that landed. That's how salespeople are. They'll go out there. They think it's a numbers game, which, by the way, it's only a numbers game because of the way you're communicating that's causing it to be a numbers game. You're turning people off. And they go out there and they'll make that one sale out of 100. And they're like, oh, it must work. Sales is a numbers game. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and somehow I'm going to make more money. But nothing, like you said, can be further from the truth. We have to adapt. We have to learn new skills. And that leads into this next question. What do you feel are the few, what do you think are a few of the biggest mistakes salespeople make?
Oh, there's a long list there. Hold on, buckle up.
I agree.
Well, I mentioned the one, assuming people trust you. That is a big one. The big complaint. I get to interview people after they've lied to their salespeople. Yes, they do lie. Too expensive, can't afford it, need to think about it, talk to a spouse. 67% of the time, as you know, it's probably a lie. And they tend to believe them. But the challenge is the complaints are is they getting too friendly too fast for a lot of people. They tend to vomit. Here are the 27 reasons, here are the 42 features, here are the 67. And that's always a turnoff, talking way too much. And it's a big shift in the world of sales that introverts are starting to be more persuasive than extroverts because they're consultants, they listen, they ask questions, versus extroverts tend to be more salesy. And of course, the moment somebody senses you're going to try to sell them something or persuade them to do something, they're going to resist them. And you've got to be careful. You've got to help them persuade themselves, sell themselves, and the process is much easier. But those are the vomiting and not listening. And I'm going to add one more to that, talking too much. To where you're overselling, you're getting past what we call the ether. They were ready to go, and you're like, well, and nothing's worse than a presentation when you have 60 minutes and 20 minutes at the end that says, how soon could we implement this? And the salesperson says, hold on, I'm not done with my presentation. You're like, hello, and done, be done.
100%. And I think one of the biggest reasons that salespeople present their solution far too early in the conversation and without ever finding out really what the problems are that person's experiencing, and not just the surface level problems, but what's behind the problem, what caused the problem, and what's the problem doing to them? How is it affecting them? They're just surface level salespeople. So because they just ask surface level questions that don't dig out that emotion, the person does not become tied into them, and they commoditize that salesperson where they just look at them as just like any other salesperson that's trying to stuff their solution down their throat, and then they just negotiate them down on price. I see that with so many companies that we train, even large companies, Fortune 500 companies, same thing. They can be 5 times as big if they really learn that, and what we teach salespeople, I think one of the biggest problems that salespeople have today is that they're taught by their companies, and they're taught by some of these traditional sales programs to be what I call product pushers rather than problem finders and problem solvers. We've all been taught you got to be excellent at problem solving, and that's great, but you have to be even better at problem finding in our day and age, 2020, because if you can't ask the right questions at the right time in that conversation you're having with your potential customer that helps them realize that they have a problem, because most prospects don't think they have problems, or they would have already came to you, or they don't know how bad their problem is or how bad it's affecting them, or what are the consequences down the road if they don't do anything. So when you're asking the right questions at the right time, it takes those problems that they've got buried in their subconscious to their conscious mind, and it becomes urgent to solve. Like it becomes front and center, like I have to change my situation now. And you can only do that by becoming a problem finder in your mind. I think that's so important for salespeople today.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. Finding that issue, putting a little salt in the wound if you need to, because like you said, sometimes they're a problem, they don't think it's a problem. And you mentioned the subconscious mind, and that was the huge factor that I found out studying persuasion influence for the last 20 years is up to 95% of influence involves that subconscious trigger, that feeling. I like them, I don't like them, I trust them, I don't trust them. And it's crazy. It could be the color of your clothes. It could be facial hair. It could be how close you're standing. It could be a word choice. It could be the tone of your voice. It could be your body language. All these things come into play.
Yeah.
People don't realize the power of the things they're doing that are repelling people and losing that sale.
I mean, you 100%. They don't realize that, when we train companies, selling, we always call it a game of inches. It's just like baseball. I played college baseball. And selling is a game of inches. Like, just like baseball, you can be out or safe at home plate by an inch. Selling is the same way. There's certain things that you're saying or questions that you're just not asking that's causing most of your prospects to run the other way. And once you learn how to eliminate that and learn the right questions to ask, it completely can take your income from here to wherever you want to take it. It really is. It's a ball game of inches, and little tweaks can mean the difference of you making $60,000 a year compared to you making maybe $300,000 a year as a W-2 salesperson. Crazy.
Exactly right. We want to be logical, but we're emotional creatures. We really have to understand those triggers. And half the stuff you're doing is repelling people, and that's why they say no, or maybe, or I'll get back to you later.
Yeah.
And it was your fault, but you never really took ownership. You never really knew.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point a couple minutes ago where you talked about, there's this old saying that buyers are liars. And I have a theory about that. Buyers are only liars. They only lie to you because they don't trust you. There's certain things you're saying or not asking that's causing them to lie to you, right? Buyers want to buy, but they only lie to salespeople because the way they're being communicated to them triggers that human response. So
all the old school techniques, the way we do things.
Yeah.
The way we don't adapt to people, when they feel pushed into a corner, all the old style stuff that just no longer is working, but that's still being taught.
Yeah, I mean, it's being taught as gospel. It's being taught as the gospel out there. And I see so many companies and salespeople go through it, and then they still wonder why, oh my gosh, us getting pumped up every day by listening to motivational CDs is not working. Like, we're still not where we need to be. Has nothing to do with it. You can get pumped up all day long, but at the end of the day, if you're not getting results, if you're not getting the reactions that you're looking for, and people are not buying, motivation doesn't last very long. It's like it just wears off pretty quickly.
That's what my early mentor, Jim Rohn, said. He says, when you motivate an idiot, you still have an idiot. So
100%. I want to ask you, because I was on your site, what do you mean by I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, the woebegone effect? What is that?
The woebegone effect. That's a huge one with salespeople. So Garrison Keillor, he wrote this book called Lake Woebegone, and social psychologists have grabbed onto the term because in this city, all the women were prettier than average, all the men were stronger than average, and all the kids were smarter than average. And so as humans and as salespeople, we have this perception bias that we think we're doing better than we actually are. Right. And I have to have people say, open up. What you think you're doing right or wrong is very different than what you're doing right or wrong. For example, 92% of managers rate their managerial skills as above average. Hello, not even possible. 90% of people rate their people skills as above average.
Sure.
Because you know that annoying person that no one likes, you know the person that rubs you the wrong way, you know that person that thinks they're funny but they're not? Yeah. That could be you. That is you. Everybody listening and watching to this, that is you. You're the annoying person. Sure, you can get along with people that are like you. Anybody can do that. But if you truly want to sell, be persuasive, be influential, you get to get along with everybody. Age groups, personalities, cultures. That's the key. In fact, here's a fun one. 85% of high school seniors rate their driving skills as above average.
Wow, that's
good. Any type of training that you do, just be open as a salesperson that you might think what you think you're doing right or wrong tends to be very different because we rate our skills higher than they actually are, especially with people skills and persuasion skills, sales skills. Sure. Be open. You've got things to work on. We all do.
Yeah. Well, and I see so many salespeople out there. I think the number one reason why a lot of salespeople are not where they could be is because they have massive egos. They think that, hey, the way I've always sold, it works. I make this amount of money and that's good. But they always want to make more. But they never understand that because they're not learning the right skills, like they're not learning skills for 2020, like our day type of consumers, that it's preventing them. It's holding them back to becoming financially wealthy and free as a sales professional. Whereas if they learn new skills, if they learn skills that work with human behavior, rather than skills they're using from traditional programs that work against it, their income could be double, triple, quadruple what they're making now. And they could work less hours.
Yeah. Less hours, more money. That's why I say there's two ways to double your income. You can work twice as hard or double your influence skills because most salespeople only have maybe 4, 5, 6 sales tools they use over and over again.
Yeah.
As Maslow says, if the only tool in your toolbox is a hammer,
Yeah.
treat everyone like a nail. There's over 100 tools that you can learn with sales, but people use the same ones, like you mentioned earlier, over and over again because it worked once,
Yeah.
and they
Well,
get more tools.
yeah, and I see so many sales trainers out there that say, "Oh, you just got to work harder. You got to call more leads. You got to double your hours." I'm like, really? You're going to work 16 hours a day? They're already working 8 hours. Like when I'm training at events, when I'm speaking from stage, I'll ask a simple question just to get people to think about that myth. I'll say, "I want you to raise your hand. Everybody raise your hand if you work hard. If you're a hard worker, you come to work on time, you call your leads, you do what you're supposed to. I want you to raise your hand." Guess how many people in the audience raise your hand? Everybody raises their hand. And then I say, now, if you're making all the money you've ever wanted to make as a salesperson, everybody that's raised your hand from all that hard work that you're doing, all the hours you're putting in away from your family, I want you to stand up. Guess how many people stand up? 0. So I say, so I think what I'm hearing all of you say is that hard work doesn't mean that you're going to make a lot of money. It's asking the right questions. It's what you're saying. It's your skill level with some work that's going to make you all that money. And people are just like, they've never thought about it that way. They think like, well, this guy told me as a sales trainer that if I just work hard and work more hours and call more leads, I'm going to make more money. I know a lot of broke salespeople that work their butt off.
Yeah, who sold them that program? Working
Exactly.
hard. It's going to be a hard worker, but working smarter, having more tools, adapting, increasing that close rate. You said it. Asking the right questions, getting into their mind is the key.
Yeah, rather than calling 100 people and having 100 conversations a day and make 2 or 3, 5 sales out of 100, I'd rather have 10 conversations and make 5 or 6 sales out of 10. I mean, what's the point? It's about the quality of the conversation, not the quantity. What do you think is, we've kind of briefly talked about this, but what is the role of trust in sales and persuasion process? What do you think that role is with trust?
It's the glue. It doesn't matter what sales skill you have, but if they don't like you or they don't trust you, there's really no chance of persuasion influence. It's very, very rare. That trust factor is critical to earn that, to get it. Because once you have the trust and they accept you as an expert, persuasion sales becomes easy, because we all want to be persuaded by an expert, someone that's going to lead us down the right path to help us make the right decision. Yeah. Again, many salespeople assume just because they feel like they're a trustworthy person, they're not called out on it, that they have that trust. But trust is an all-time low. It's dropped 6 points in the last 5 years, and it can be based on profession. It can be based on experience. There's a lot of factors there to quantify trust, but this is the glue to the whole process. Yeah,
and trust is king. When we train companies, it's almost like we have to unbrainwash them on the way they've always sold from like traditional selling techniques they might have learned from decades ago. But we have to unbrainwash them and train them. Because really, how do you build trust? You only build trust by listening, acting like you're there to help them, and really asking the right questions at the right time in that conversation. Those factors with human behavior, that's what causes someone to trust you. Because they feel like, with most salespeople, they feel like they're just there to stuff their solution down their throat to make a sale. But when you're that trusted authority and you're asking those questions and you're listening intently, they feel like you're there to help them, not sell them. And when they feel you're only there to help them solve their challenges and problems, not sell them something, they completely open up. Completely night and day difference. 100%.
And once they open up, again, it becomes easy. So there's a lot, and I mean, there's a lot of factors there. One, some of the research is showing also that the importance of that credibility factor with the trust. And what a lot of salespeople don't realize is that you can borrow credibility from an introduction, referral, or recommendation. You increase credibility when you teach them something new in the first couple of minutes. You get accepted as the expert. But here's an interesting one. It's kind of counterintuitive for a lot of salespeople, is that your prospect's looking for something that's wrong with you, your company, your product, your service, your idea. Something's got to be wrong. Yeah. And if you don't give them something that's wrong, they're going to make one up. And you don't want that to happen, because what they make up and what you would give them will be 2 different things. Sure. And so the studies are showing that if you can reveal a minor weakness, just a little something that's not quite right, and turn it into a strength, it actually increases trust. Yeah. For example, we see it in marketing. Avis rental car, we're number 2 weakness, but we try harder. Heinz ketchup, it gets complained it's too thick, it doesn't come out. They're like, what do you want, a ruddy ketchup? Or Volkswagen, when it came out in the 60s, it said, this car's so slow you'll never get a ticket. So we see it in marketing, but sometimes not a glaring, but just a minor weakness. For example, if you were a small company going against a large company, that could be a perceived weakness. They're going to find out anyway. Let them know. Don't let them make one up. Yeah, we're smaller, but you know what? We're a little more nimble. We get it done 2 weeks faster. We'll get lost in the crack. Cell phone 24 hours a day. Turn that into a strength. And so careful. If you come across as too good to be true, even though it is true, it might not be true to them. You might need to just downsize it a little bit, back up a little bit. That little piece can be very, very helpful. Even though it's counterintuitive for many salespeople, that piece can be very, very helpful to you.
Yeah, it's because today's consumers are extremely cautious and skeptical. And it's because they are used to being sold something 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They wake up in the morning, they get on Facebook. Somebody's trying to pitch them something on Facebook, latest lotions and potions, come join my business or whatever. They turn on the radio. There's commercials trying to sell them something. They turn on the TV. Somebody's trying to sell them in the commercials. They're driving down the road. They see billboards trying to sell them. They're constantly being sold 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And because of that, they have defensive reactions, just built-in reactions that trigger certain things. Like if you walk into a department store and you're looking to buy something and the salesperson comes over and says, "How can I help you?" You say what?
Just looking.
Just looking, even though you're there to buy something, right? That's just something that's a trigger, So there's certain things, questions, and certain phrases we have to eliminate that triggers that. Tell me more about the Piano of Persuasion. I wanted to ask you that.
Well, like you said, most salespeople only have 3 or 4 tools. I mean, you could probably chop down a tree with a hammer if you worked hard enough. That was your only tool, but there's better options like a stick of dynamite or a backhoe or an axe or a chainsaw, something. And that's what I say, when you look at the different tools or the keys to the piano, don't just play chopsticks with 1 or 2 fingers. Get all the tools, get all the keys so you can play. And some of the keys you might only use once or twice a year, but if that closes that deal for you, it's important to have. Or the post hole digger. I don't know if you have a post hole digger, but that's something you use probably once a year. But when you need it, you need it. Just like some of the keys on the piano. And so those tools, adapting to the prospect, getting past your default setting is key. So you can play Mozart instead of just playing chopsticks.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that analogy, and it's really about what we train salespeople when we come into companies is we always ask them: is training something you did, or is training something that you do? And like, it's something you do, right? Because
all the time, yeah.
The best coaches, the best athletes, they continually train, right? Like LeBron James continually trains. Tiger Woods has a hitting instructor. He continually trains. Even though he's at the top, was the best in the world, he still knows that he has to keep getting better. And I see so many salespeople and companies think that because they're here, they're just kind of getting by, treading by, that they can't get better. And they just, they read an alarming stat. The average salesperson in North America spends less than like $57 a year on sales training.
And that's my first question when I hire salespeople is like, what'd you listen to on the way in? Tell me about your personal development program. What's the last book you read? That's all I need to know. Because great salespeople, as you know, they're into personal development. All leaders are readers. There's just something there that makes a huge difference. In fact, a Harvard study found that those that learn and grow every day, they're more optimistic, they're more enthusiastic about where they're going, what they're accomplished. But you've met those who don't learn and grow every day that are watching TV are negative, pessimistic, and doubtful. And they think they know everything because they're watching TV and they know nothing. Compared to the people that are learning and growing every day are like, I got a lot to learn. And they just changes your psyche.
They regress. I'm a sales trainer. We train a lot of larger companies and small companies all over the place, but I still read. I read 3 books a month on sales and persuasion. And some of the books, to be quite frank with you, I read and I'm like, I didn't really learn hardly anything from that. Like, in fact, I think I lost some brain cells because those techniques are so old school that just, I want to throw up. But I might learn a gold nugget and I'm like, you know what? That's actually a pretty good question that he taught there. But if we rephrase it this way, it's going to have more of a psychological impact. It's going to persuade better if we redo it that way. And so there's always something you can learn. So if you're not investing in your training as a sales professional, you're never going to make the money you want. You'll never become financially wealthy if you don't invest in yourself.
Yeah. Direct correlation between your personal development and your income. There's no doubt about that. In fact, we both work with Brian Tracy, and he says if you can read 30 minutes a day in your field, after 5 years, you're a national authority.
Yeah.
It's so important. It only changes your psyche, but you are more confident. You have the skills. It changes the game.
Yeah, you only gain confidence by knowing the right skills. Because if you have the right skills, you're going to have confidence. If you don't have the right skills, if you're just out there winging it, especially in sales, you're never going to have confidence. 100%.
Never.
What do you mean by connectivity? I also wanted to ask you that.
Do people like you? Can you connect with people? Not the old school cheesy, hey, tell me about your trophy. Hey, you're a fisher. You fish, don't you? The old school ding ding, they're trying to sell me something. But in fact, the studies I've been doing lately, when you take connectivity and trust, for example, if you can identify what's in it for them and they like you and trust you, you're talking about an 88% chance of selling them.
Yeah.
I mean, those are huge factors, but do they like you?
Yeah.
Do they? Remember I mentioned that earlier. Are you that annoying person? You are. Because you can get along with people that are like you. Anybody can do that.
Sure.
We get different styles, personalities, cultures, mindsets, beliefs. We're living in a country now where you can't like somebody because they believe something different, but you cannot truly be a leader if you can't get along with different styles, personalities. And so connectivity is your ability to build that rapport, both on the, there's the short-term factor when you meet people for the first time, and then long-term people skills and rapport. But that ability to get that relationship is critical. In fact, I was talking to a CEO who was working on this multi-million-dollar deal down to two companies, company A and company B, and he went with company B. They were pretty similar with price and structure. And I'm like, why'd you go with company B? He's like, I like them better.
Sure.
That's how powerful it is. And sometimes people say, well, it shouldn't be an issue. Well, okay, but it is. Yeah. It's a huge issue. Yeah. Likability is massive in the world of sales.
Yeah. You know, I just posted this on social media, I think a couple of days ago, but people buying from friends and family and people they know just because they know them, those days are done. People buy based on who they trust and who they feel are going to get them the results they want. Those days of buying from friends and neighbors just because you know them, those days have been long gone for a long time. They buy from people they trust and people who they feel can get them results, period.
They're the expert, they can get it done. And so when you combine those worlds, it can be a powerful thing. But don't assume they like you, don't assume they trust you, just like we talked about earlier. But that relationship for long term is very important.
Yeah, and trust is not by going to their office, like you said, and saying, oh, how was the weather in the town? Or I like the local football team, or it looks like your daughter got married. My daughter got married. People have heard that so many times. When you go into an office and you're saying those things to your prospects, they're like, get to the point. So when you're coming in, and you can briefly chat just a little bit, but you're there really to find out more about them and what they're looking for to see if you can actually help them. It's all about your questioning ability, not cheesy surface level questions. That does not build trust. That does not pull out their emotions. I call those surface questions. You're going to be average if you ask surface questions. You have to ask questions that are below the surface, that pull out the human being's emotions, because people, like you said, are emotional. They buy on emotion. Brain studies prove that now. They only justify it with logic. 100%.
Got to have both. And that's right. We focus on the wrong things too many times when we go talk to them, or the high lactose cheesy questions, or the demeanor that you have, where it's like, oh, they're here to sell. Once they feel that, they're going to resist you. Yeah. So great persuaders, great salespeople can get through that, cut through that clutter. And when we go to a doctor's, we love the questions. We want the questions. And when they accept you as the expert, they want those questions too, to make sure you understand their wants and needs.
100%. It's asking the right questions that eliminate the wall of resistance from even forming. That's all it is, where you don't have objections throughout the conversation. I wanted to ask you this. Tell us more about your IQ test. I was really interested in that.
Well, it started out, it was a pretty intense test. It was 100 questions. And of course, that gets pretty intimidating. But I've developed a persuasion IQ test that goes over some different techniques and laws of persuasion that allows people kind of assess where they're at, what things they can work on, what things they need to improve on. I've done over 10,000, I've been in over 10,000 of these just to kind of get a feel of trends, where people are going, what they need to work on, what their woebegone effect is, their denial factor, where they think they're doing right, but they're not. Just allows me to do an assessment, especially after a 3-4 day seminar, the before and after we do the assessment, we can see the increase. That makes a huge difference.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because once you understand where you're at in persuasion now, like once you identify like, hey, I'm here because of these factors, then you can go out about changing that. Like, like, hey, I've got a problem. I need to fix it. Here's what I need to do. So that leads into this next question, because I see this myth so much out there. Salespeople always ask me this. Are people born with high level sales and persuasion skills? Is it something you're born with, or is it something that you can acquire?
Yes. So I think, and I know because I did a lot of research on charisma, and people always like, can you learn charisma? And some things we just do naturally with our upbringing. But for the most part, we can all learn to persuade. We can all learn to sell. We can all become better. Some traits we naturally have growing up. We learn on the playground. We might have a high emotional intelligence. But any skill that we need within the world of charisma or persuasion or influence, I guarantee you can improve it. You can get better. The salesmen aren't born. We've heard that before. You don't see a baby with a briefcase that has the gift of gab. I mean, they can cry. They're naturally persuasive with their crying, but born salesperson. They can sell ice to an Eskimo. No, that was learned through observation, through schooling, through personal development, through experience. And anybody can improve. Anybody get better. Anybody can become a better salesperson.
Well, sales is an acquired skill, 100%. Salespeople ask me that sometimes. Like, they'll come up after an event, after I'm speaking, and I'm like, hey, I wasn't born with the gift of gab. Well, here's what I've seen, especially in my corporate days when I was a sales manager and, sales executive training salespeople in the companies I worked for. Usually the salespeople that had the gift of the gab, that talked a lot, usually made the least amount of money. That's what we found. I mean, they talked too much. I think this is an old rumor, like maybe 50 years ago that was the case, but not in our day and age. The highest paid salespeople are the salespeople that are best at listening. And I mean like real listening, like not fake listening, real listening. And they're the best at asking the right questions that help the prospect uncover that pain and those problems in their mind where they feel like they have to do something now to solve that pain, to solve that problem. Those are the highest salespeople in the world, no matter what they are selling. So when salespeople ask me that, if it's learned or something you're born with, I simply say, well, do you feel like you can learn how to listen? Yeah, I can learn how to listen better. Yeah, for sure. Okay, do you feel like you can learn how to ask specific questions, maybe in a step-by-step structure? Do you think you could learn different questions to ask? Yeah, I could learn that. Okay, well, I think that you just answered yourself. Selling is something you can learn. And they're like, they just couldn't put that together until then, that's really what sales is. It's not talking, it's listening and asking the right questions.
And those gift of the gab, they're making a lot of friends, not sell anything. And that's the challenge, I believe, with most salespeople is they become innate. Sometimes we don't know how to train people what they're doing. It just becomes second nature to them. And they say things like, well, just talk more, listen more. And it's not the exact same thing they need at that time, because going from a great salesperson to a trainer is a big leap for most people, because they just instinctively do it and they don't know what that is sometimes.
Yeah, they instinctively do it. And that's why I see so many salespeople that, let's say they're selling insurance and they get out of that industry and they go sell, let's say, medical device equipment, and they can't succeed. It's because they really don't know how to sell. Maybe in insurance or whatever they were selling, they had this little pitch that they did and it would work and they would make some money, but then they take that over to a different industry and it doesn't work at all. And because they don't have the foundation of selling what selling is, they don't have that foundation of a step-by-step process of their questions and the psychological impact those questions will have on that person they're talking to, they can't go from different industry to industry and still pick up that same success.
Happens all the time, to where they just had a few tools that worked, but when you get a new industry or a new prospect, all of a sudden, wait a minute, that didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. It's bad, man. Kurt, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. Like, this has
been
my
pleasure.
An intriguing conversation. I know that our listeners are going to want to know more, because there's an old saying that goes, "You can't teach a kid how to ride a bike at a seminar."
That's
right?
So true.
You can't teach everything about sales and persuasion in a 45 minute interview. There's things they're going to have to learn. There's questions they're going to have to learn how to ask to really get their income to where they want to go. So I wanted to ask you, do you have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners?
Do it. Become it. Become great at what you do. This is your craft. Get up from the roof and shout to people that you're in sales. This is the greatest profession in the world. You can earn what you're worth, but to earn what you're worth, you've got to learn the skills. You got to learn the techniques. You got to work on yourself, the personal development, the self-persuasion, the mindset. every aspect of the game. Become great at what you do. Don't lose mediocrity. Sure, you're paying the bills and maybe aren't. You can do better here. And that's the key. That's the message. And understand human nature, why we do what we do, those subconscious triggers, and be a student of what you're doing after a sale. What caused resistance? What didn't? What worked? What didn't work? Become better. Improve. That makes the difference. Work on yourselves and you'll see dividends. You'll see your income double, triple, whatever you want to do. Work on yourself, and that is what makes the difference in the world.
Yeah, you become a student, you become a master of your profession. And if you want to make a lot of money as a salesperson, if you want to get your prospects to start chasing you rather than you always having to chase them, you have to learn what Kurt has really talked about here about self-persuasion. It's the art of asking the right questions at the right time in the conversation that psychologically gets that prospect to persuade themselves that they want to change their situation and they want to change it with you, because they look at you as the trusted authority rather than just another salesperson who's out there trying to sell them something. Completely different reaction you'll get and completely different income in your life.
Make more money.
100%.
Double your income.
So I want to ask you this question because I want our listeners to be able to learn more about this from you. Where can our listeners get one of your books and learn more about your other companies and ventures? Like, where do they need to go now so they can learn more of these skills from you?
The maximizeyourinfluence.com is my overall site I do a podcast on there for Maximize Your Influence. I talk about the different tools, the science behind influence and persuasion every week. If you want to get the free book, Maximum Influence, help me out. Go to takeyouriq.com. It's a shorter version, 10 questions your IQ. You'll get your results. But you help me with my research, I'll give you my free best value book, the digital copy at Maximum Influence, as a reward for doing that. So win-win for both of us. You'll get better skills. I'll get some good research.
Yeah.
It's at takeyouriq.com.
I love the data-driven approach, right? It's all the science behind it. So everybody listening, you've got an amazing opportunity. Just go to takeyouriq.com, like Kurt had mentioned, so he can, enter in your information there, short question answer there, so he can have that research. And for you doing that, he's going to give you a copy of his book absolutely for free. That's an amazing deal.
For you today, for free. How about that?
I like it. Kurt, it was an honor. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. We call it closers are losers, not because, if you're out closing sales, you're a loser. It's because in our day and age in 2020, if you're still using closing and manipulative techniques and trying to push the buyer into doing something you want them to do, you are losing sales that you could be making. So important.
Yeah, if you have to end up with a closing skill, you blew it somewhere else before that. You've got to start working on that before working on a close.
100%. Kurt, it's a pleasure to have you on here.
My pleasure.
It's all about asking the right questions to get them committed to take the next step. I hate that word closing it. I feel like it demeans people. It's asking the right commitment or committing questions that get them to take action and solve their problem with your solution. Well done, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
You bet.